This is Christopher Schrader on the WX0CAS channel here at Murillo WX. Ladies and gentlemen, we're coming up onto our 5th episode here, and today, because we're in October, we're starting to get into the fall. Some places have already seen some snow. In fact, Colorado Springs has already seen some snow, so we're going to jump straight into winter weather preparedness. Now, a lot of people are just like, oh my gosh, it's just snow. It's not a big deal. Just put better tires on your car and you're good to go. There's actually a lot more to what a winter weather warning or any of those other warnings are around that same point. And if you're not properly prepared, it can actually catch you really off guard. So today's episode, we're going to be taking a little bit of time to be able to discuss, first off, what is a winter weather warning? What is a blizzard warning? What's an ice warning? Or watches. We always get those watches first. And then we're also going to explain what conditions can actually arise from this winter weather that we can be able to see, and also what you can be able to do to help prepare your family for when winter weather approaches your home. Now, I know for some of y'all listening here, you're not going to be sitting in the winter weather zones, or at least you're not going to think that you are. But in fact, at one point in time, just recently, I believe it was about 2 years ago, every single state of the United States had snow somewhere on the ground in their state. So if you think, oh, I live in the South, I live in Georgia, I live in Florida, I don't have to worry about this. Actually, you do. And there was, I believe it was 4 years ago, there was a ice storm that came through Florida and really hindered the orange crops from the area and damaged a lot. So we're going to be talking about that every single state here in the U.S. has the opportunity to get winter weather. Now, when we say winter weather, we always think of that full-on blizzard, whiteout conditions. You step outside, you're going to get blown down the street before you can even blink, or you got the icicles coming out of the nostrils, or if you're like me and you have a mustache, you got that white mustache just covered in ice. That is a possibility of winter weather, but winter weather itself has many different points to it. So the first thing we're going to discuss, though, is the difference between a winter weather watch and a winter weather warning. So as we stated before, when you have a watch versus warning, a watch means that the conditions are prevalent or they are available to have a significant weather impact on your area. A watch will cover multiple counties, and it could even cover multiple states for a single watch. If you look at a map during winter, we kind of jumble it all up into winter weather, but there is ice storms, blizzards, whiteouts, winter weather conditions, and also avalanche warnings. All of these are kind of lumped into one, but they're each individualized. So if you're looking at the map and you say, oh, well, the county that I'm in is under a blizzard watch, but the county to my east is under a winter weather watch. It means that it's not going to impact the wind as much, but there's still going to be a big snowmaker out there. When you get a blizzard, well, let's start off with that. A winter weather watch or advisory will come out, and this is showing that we're going to be in the proper temperature range with the proper moisture level that can be able to produce snow and hazardous conditions. This is going to bring up the point of ice on the roads, snow on the roads, where we might have to shovel some sidewalks kind of deal. And then it kind of amplifies from there. After you get just the basic mix, then some more things will come into place. If you've got a high wind advisory in that same area during the same time as a winter weather, you might have the conditions for a blizzard. So they'll then say, okay, here's a blizzard watch for this area. We're watching to make sure that the conditions will stay the same. And a lot of times these will come out pretty early. Most of these will come out like a day or two out, and you'll really start getting the advanced warnings for winter weather. When you have ice storms, same thing. It'll be an ice warning or an ice storm warning. There's other deals, like if there's no actual storm condition, but it's going to drop in temperature, you can be able to get a freeze warning. Freeze warnings are really more in the late end of our fall time or beginning of our fall when it's really going to damage crops. Freeze warnings come out more frequently when something comes up, just to make sure people are prepared for that. Then we also have blizzards, ice storms, avalanche warnings. Avalanche warnings are going to be later on in the year, and we're going to have a whole episode on what avalanches are and what hazards they can pose for the area. But the big thing is, if you have an avalanche warning, this means you've had snowpack on top of snowpack on top of snowpack on top of snowpack, and now you've got this loose snow that has built up to the point where it can actually cause a shift in the snowbank itself and turn into an avalanche. And like I said, a later episode, we're going to be talking about how avalanches work and the whole mechanics on how they form. But right now, we're going to stick with the winter weather. So when we bring up the winter weather watch, what should you do? The main thing is prepare, mentally and physically. What these watches are showing is that the conditions are right for this incident with the severe weather. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are ready to go in case the winter weather warning comes out and we're able to take action immediately. One of the things that everyone thinks of, in order to prepare, I have to go stock up on 5 days worth of food. Now, you might not have to. But it might not be a bad idea to already have your 72-hour go bag set up. Now, the next episode we're going to talk about go bags, how to prepare your go bags. And after that, we're going to talk about how to prepare your car for a go kit in your car as well, in case you get stuck outside of your area. But the main thing that we talk about when we do go bags is you make sure that even in your home preparedness kit, you have 72 hours of preparedness. This means 72 hours of food, water, heat sources, and entertainment that you can be able to use per person in your family's household. And we're really going to be getting into that later on in this episode of what exactly do I need? What's my limits or what's my goal for each one? And one of the things that we like to explain is when you're doing a preparedness point where you're saying, hey, I'm stocking up on food, we talk about how you can be able to get started with your food before you're preparing for a specific disaster. For instance, in this whole group, I bet there's a bunch of people that love to have like mac and cheese or specific canned goods, it's like their favorite things in the world, or other dry goods that doesn't take a lot of heating to be able to work with. What we recommend for our teachings here at Murillo is that you use these kinds of foods in your disaster prep. We call this, for a reason we bring this up, is because it's your mental state. You've got a psychological event that's now happening, and you want to make sure that you're prepared psychologically as well as physically. Well, one of those things is trying to minimize the amount of changes that are going to be going on during this disaster. The reason for that is it'll help you stay calm for longer, and it will actually help you focus more because there's one less thing that's going to change in this ever-ending changing deal. One of the things that we talk about also is cycling your food. The other advantage of having food that you're already going to be eating is to cycle it through. So you always have a pantry full of 72 hours of food. You never let it go below 72 hours worth of food. But when you go to the grocery store to buy your food, you buy that food to replenish your stock that you're going to be using that week. So if, let's say, for instance, I'm just going to use this because it's the most common one here, SpaghettiOs. Let's say we have a stock of SpaghettiOs. We've got, we love eating it all the time. I'm not one of those. I don't like SpaghettiOs all the time. Occasionally I like them, but not all the time. But anyway, let's say you bring up the SpaghettiOs deal and you're going to be cycling through it. You go to the store, you buy a week's worth of SpaghettiOs, and now you have fresh supply of SpaghettiOs. As you go through the week, you should already have 72 hours of food already there. Take the new cans, put it behind the old cans. Now, as you go through the week, you're going to use your old can of food, cycle it down to the new stuff. This way, you never have to worry about your food ever expiring in your disaster kits, because it's being cycled through on all of your everyday foods. Also, when you're working with winter weather preparedness, we also want to be talking about water. Water's a big thing. A lot of times people are like, oh, just go fill up your bathtub with water. That's the best way to do this. A lot of times you might not have that opportunity, and not only that, stagnant water like that can actually cause more issues as time goes on. So the best thing to do is, like for what we do, we have both bottled water and we also have the water in gallon jugs. The reason for this is, of course, the bottled water is for your ease of access to use all the time, but then we still have water at our house. About every 2 weeks, I'm buying a new pallet of water, and by pallet, I mean just a Costco container, if you don't have Costco, or King's, Safeway, anything like, not Safeway, Sam's Club. Sam's Club or Costco are the big warehouse styles. If not, you can still get these good pallets at Walmart, King Soopers, Kroger, Safeway, all those kind of deals. And you can be able to get the water in pallets that you can keep in your regular everyday. Now, of course, we all try to reduce our use of throwing away things. We want to recycle everything we can. A lot of people are like, well, I don't do bottled water. I have to have water bottles that I fill up. Okay, cool. Then an idea that you can use is, if you are one of those people that don't want to buy the pallets of bottled water, we recommend going to the dollar store or somewhere that's inexpensive and go buy a bunch of regular refillable water bottles. And then once you fill them, put them in your fridge and use those. Again, cycle them through. Put the new ones in the back and then bring out the ones that have been in there for a few days. This way you're going to have a constant supply of water that you don't have to rely on the faucet to be able to get the water from. This way we're not worried about, well, disaster struck, electricity went out. A lot of times when electricity goes out, water pumps go out. We don't have the capability of pulling water from the pipes if we don't have electricity. Some of these places have pump stations. Like here in Colorado Springs, we've got a lot of pump stations that keep our water pressurized. But if the pump stations go down, we have no pressurized water. Our entire water system relies on pressure. We have nothing to fill our bathtubs up, our sinks up, even flush your toilet. You don't have that capability. So a lot of times people will not remember that before a disaster. So when we work with disaster preparedness, we want to make sure that we're thinking this every day. Not just, okay, when a disaster strikes, this is what I need to do. No, today there could be a disaster, so here's how I'm going to live my day. And we try to do this to minimize the impact on an everyday life. Everybody on here is going to be coming from a different walk of life. Some people are like, hey, I'm more than willing to go down to Costco and go spend $4 on a pallet of water bottles and then just use them every once in a while, but I still have a stock of water bottles in my home. It's also good to have something like that, and I'll give you, for instance, here, the complex I live at, we had a water main break that shut down our entire complex of water for 2 days. We had no water. Now, this not only affected the ability to shower or use a toilet or have running water for drinking or cooking, but it also affected just the concept of we don't have water. Now, because of what I do, I already had pallets of water and gallons of water already set up. And our apartment complex actually ran out of bottled water because people weren't prepared for a concept like this. If everybody in the complex here had one pallet of water, we had more than enough water to drink for 2 days. Between me and my wife, we were fine. And the dog had water too because we had the gallon jugs. So everybody's watered. We're all good. And then we had the gallon water already set up, so we use that for cooking. And pretty much my wife and I, we do a lot of camping, so we just pulled out the old styles of, okay, so we're camping. How do we recycle our water? Okay, well, when we need to wash dishes, we'll use it after we've used it to boil whatever that was in a bottle or whatever we do. We conserve our water no different than if we're out camping, and that's the best concept to use. Most people, when they think of disaster preparations, they think of, oh, it's a completely different thing. I have to work with it. If anyone's gone camping, it's pretty much the same thing. We're planning ahead. Now, like I said before, we're going to go ahead and take a couple commercial breaks throughout our show. So we're going to take our first one here, and when we come back, we're going to jump right into more actions that you can do to help prepare your family for when winter weather comes your way. So we'll be right back after these words from our messages here. Now, you may be asking yourself, or trying to ask me, Christopher, you keep saying we need to build a kit. We need to have preparations for this. But what do we need in this kit? Well, I'm glad you asked that, even if it was just in your head. At ready.gov/kit, K-I-T. And again, all of our web links that we talk about during the show will be in the comments or in the description channels here, just so you can have that directly to get there. And we're going to be working off of the ready.gov system mainly because they are the best place to get all this information that we're bringing up from. So ready.gov has a wonderful, wonderful system. If you are going to be going to the store, you can be able to download a printable version of what we're going to be reading off, and you can be able to use it as a check mark through there. Now, before you go to the store, before you figure out, you need to find out, like we talked about before, what unique needs does your family have? Do you need to get additional supplies for pets? Or anybody in your house that's an elderly that may need to have additional stuff? But you need to keep that in mind when you're thinking about these kind of preparations. Now, if you guys have heard me on here, I don't edit my podcast. I keep it 100% pure. I don't go through and say, oh, I didn't like the way that sounded. This is a one-take podcast. The reason for it is because I want you guys to think of this podcast not as a page structured, this is how it's scripted. This is all me just talking to you, one-on-one, trying to help you understand how to better prepare your family for when disaster strikes. So, a basic emergency supply kit will include the following. Water. You must have 1 gallon of water per person per day for 3 days. This is for drinking and sanitation. By sanitation, they also mean things like brushing your teeth or washing your hair, making it where you're clean and sanitary. When you've got a 1 gallon per person, this does not include infants. The recommendation for infants is a half a gallon per infant per day for 3 days. So for instance, for my family, I've got 2 adults and 1 infant. So we would need 2.5 gallons of water per day for at least 3 days. So therefore, we need a little over 8.5 gallons of water for us to be able to have here with us. I have that. We already have that whole system set up between bottled water and gallon waters. In addition, we also have an extra gallon of water for our dog that we've included in there. We actually have about 10 gallons of water that we keep storage in through at all times. For food, at least 3 days supply of non-perishable food. This means things you can keep in your pantry. Like we talked about before the break, we bring up the concept of making sure that you rotate through your stock. This way you can keep the 3-day supply of non-perishable food and it doesn't go expired, but yet when disaster strikes, you lose power, whatever the case may be, it doesn't go bad. You should at least have a battery-powered or hand-crank radio that has a NOAA weather alert tone in your kit. If you go to Walmart or Target or any of the places like that, Amazon's another good place to go to. They have very inexpensive hand crank NOAA weather radios that you can be able to add to your kit. Now again, I understand that 90% of the people who listen to this podcast are like, we can't afford this. I'm not able to drop $600, $700, $800 on a kit just to be prepared for a possible disaster that may or may not come. I'm not expecting you to go out and buy everything today, but every check, go ahead and say, okay, we can put in $30 towards the kit. We can put in $75 toward the kit. We can put in $5 toward the kit. Every little bit, every single check helps because that just brings you one step closer to a fully prepared kit. If a disaster strikes between your start and your end of your fully prepared kit, you're at least that much closer to being fully prepared, which will help you that much more even if a disaster strikes before you're ready for it. So we're not expecting you to go out and say, okay, well, we're not going to go get some groceries because we're going to go buy all this disaster kit. Don't do that. Also, shop the sales. Walmart, Amazon, Target, there's constantly sales on equipment like this that you can be able to work with, getting different sale items, getting different points that you can be able to work with. You want to make sure you have a flashlight, and with the flashlight, you want extra batteries. A lot of people don't remember this part, but keep extra batteries. If you're like me, I've actually put in for, at Costco, they have these cool things. They're night lights. They plug into the wall, and they've got a color changing scheme to them, so you can be able to change different colors for each of the rooms or whatever. I just set mine all to blue because that way it's still enough light that you can see at night. But what's really cool is if the power goes out, you unplug these night lights from the wall, and they've got a 4-hour battery life to each flashlight. Well, we have 3 of them, so right there is 12 hours that we have just in recharge, constantly charged flashlights. Then I have 2 regular handheld flashlights that run off of AA batteries and some extra AA's. The main thing is you want to make sure you have some sort of light at some point, because the more light you have, the better off you're going to feel. You also want a first aid kit. A lot of people ask, well, it just says first aid kit. What do I need to get? Do I need to get a trauma kit? Do I need to get just the $5 Band-Aid pack? Anything is better than nothing. I recommend getting the basic first aid kit, which is going to have your Band-Aids, some gauze for larger injuries, also has the capability of having, some of them have the ACE wraps for them, just so that way you can have a more wider spread for what could happen for your home. I don't recommend going out and buying a $300 trauma kit, because if you need that kind of level of kit, number one, you should have that kind of level of training, but number two, you're already going to be needing assistance from paramedics and fire department to that point. So just a basic everyday, I bumped my knee, scratched my face, or my infant took his fingernail to my eyeball. It happened today, so that's why I bring it up. And stuff like that is where a basic standard first aid kit. You can again get these even at Walgreens. They have a standard first aid kit, which I believe they call it basic first aid. Also, you want a whistle or a sound emanating device to signal for help. The reason for this is a lot of times if something happens like a blizzard or any other disaster, you want to make sure that you can be able to get your sound heard farther away without using as much energy, because there may be cases where you're not going to be able to have full energy to be able to ask for help. You also want to have a dust mask to help filter contaminated air. And when we talk about the sheltering in place, we're going to be bringing that up in a specific episode too. We also talk about plastic sheeting and duct tape to be able to create a airtight space, and we'll talk about that later on. You want to have just standard stuff, moist towelettes, garbage bags, plastic ties. This is for personal sanitation. You want to have a wrench or pliers to turn off utilities if you have access to those. Some places, like my place, you cannot have access to those. A manual can opener for the food. I know a lot of people out there have those electric can openers. Just stick the can up there and it goes zzz, and it's done. Those aren't going to work if you don't have power. Local maps. A lot of people I know my area. Okay, cool. But what happens if you're going to have to take detour routes? What happens if you're being evacuated and you don't know the streets on that section? It's always a good idea to just have some local maps. Now, they also recommend having your cell phone with chargers and a backup battery. They're not saying keep your cell phone in the disaster kit. They're just saying keep that in mind. Also, a backup battery is not a bad idea. I have a battery bank that we actually have here because a lot of our equipment that we operate, my wife and I, are USB powered for the deal. So I actually have 5 or 6 of these full battery packs that I have that are always charged and ready to go. All I gotta do is pull them and leave, and I've got battery power. Some other things that you want to keep thinking of when you're building your supplies, these are going to be more towards your personal situation. Do you have any prescription medications? that you're going to need to be taking at irregular intervals, you're going to want to make sure that you have those. Now, it's harder to keep the prescription medications up when you just keep them in a kit. One of the things that is recommended by many organizations is to have those 7-day pill containers. That way, if something happens, you just grab the one pill container and you've got all your medication for the remainder of the week. That way, if you're like me, you just keep them going. What I would do is when I would have my medication I would take, as soon as I would take it out of the pill container, I just put the next ones in there for that date, so that way by the next week I still had it. I always had 7 days of medication ready to go. Non-prescription medications such as pain relievers or antacids, laxatives, stuff like that you may or may not be thinking of immediately during a disaster. If you're like me, you have to have something to help with your vision. Do you have glasses, like an extra pair that you can put in there, or some contact lens solution? Contacts that I wear get dry constantly. Infant formula or food, bottles, diapers, wipes, diaper rash cream. We keep a diaper bag that we always go with. That's part of our go bag kit, is everything's already in there. Again, if you have pets, pet food, extra water. Do you have a section of cash? Like a couple $100 just cash that's in an envelope that's in your safe. So if you do have a disaster, grab the cash. You have some way of getting something. Important family documents. You want insurance policies, identifications, maybe some account records from your bank for proof of your identity. Keep this in a waterproof portable container. Do you have sleeping bags for each of your people of your family? If it gets cold, you'll want sleeping bags. Do you have a complete change of clothing if you have a go bag? How many people here have a fire extinguisher in their kitchen? I bet not a lot of people do. Or if you do, when was the last time you checked to see if it was expired or still fully charged? For women, make sure you have your personal hygiene items as well, feminine supplies. Also, think of food stuff. Again, we're talking about camping. So have a camp kit, like a mess kit that you can be able to bring. This will have paper cups or cups, plates, towels, stuff like that are in one unit. Also, books, games, and puzzles activities for children is another really good thing to try and have for them. And again, when you're maintaining your kit, you want to make sure that you keep everything in containers or in cool, dry places where you can't be able to have things grow in it. Make sure you replace your expired items as you need to. For instance, like I said, use that food style to rotate stock of your food. And also, every year, update your kit. Your family is going to change. Now, I recommend not every year, but every major season change. Reevaluate, relook at what you have, and see what you need to be able to change. Because, I mean, my infant, he takes 2 weeks, and I have to change everything in his schedule because he's a kid, he's growing. So just keep that concept. Now, you don't know where you're going to be during an emergency, so you want to make sure you prepare your supplies at your home, work, and in your vehicle as well. At your house, you should have 72 hours of a kit in your home, but also have a system set up that you can grab for a go bag, and we'll talk about that on our next episode. At work, be prepared for a shelter at work for 24 hours. So have enough food and water and other necessities that you have, as well as comfortable shoes. If you're in a place of an office where you have to have dress shoes, even just having tennis shoes makes the entire world of difference. So you want to have something like that. If you're at a desk, keep it at your desk. Or if you have ability to keep your car on site, keep it in your car. In addition, you should also have an emergency supplies in your car. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm just going to throw it in the trunk. That's great. Unless you're stranded on the road and you can't get into your trunk, it does no good there. So one of the episodes we're going to talk about later is how to prepare your car for an emergency supply kit. And we'll be getting into that and telling you some nice tips and tricks that you can be able to use to have everything in your car ready to go when you need it. So we're going to go ahead and take another real quick break here, and then we're going to go through a final scenario of winter weather and what we can be able to do to go through a winter weather warning and the situations of conditions that can actually arise from this. So we'll be right back after a quick word from our commercial break here. Be right back. The National Weather Service has issued a winter weather warning for your area. Please take actions immediately. Conditions may include wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour, blinding areas of blowing snow, heavy snowfall rates including 2 to 3 inches of accumulation per hour. This is a concept that may or may not happen for your area, but we're going to be using it as our scenario. So, for instance, we heard the warning here. National Weather Service has issued a winter weather warning. This means that the conditions are going to happen within the next 24 hours, and these are the forecasted conditions. The main thing that we heard out of there was wind is going to be coming at 50 miles per hour gusts, which is going to cause blinding snow. We also have possibility of heavy bands up to 2 to 3 inches of accumulation per hour. Let's just say the storm's going to go for 10 hours, but we're not going to have 3 inches for every hour for 10 hours. That would be 30 inches of snow. We're going to do a normal Colorado snowstorm. So the storm's going to last for 10 hours. The first 3 hours are pretty much just going to be wind and the dry, fluffy snow. And then for the next 3 hours, we're going to have 3 inches per hour. We're now going to have 9 inches of snow instantly on the ground overnight. And then on the last part of the storm, which is going to be the last 2 hours, the snow accumulations drop down. And by the end of the storm, we now have a foot of snow on the ground. Here in Colorado, a foot of snow is actually quite a bit. So that's what we're going to run with this number. So 1 foot of snow has fallen. And this is going to happen overnight. So the storm is supposed to come in around dinner time, and it's going to get really cold really fast. You're sitting at home, you're eating dinner with the family, everyone's having a good time. After dinner, you decide, okay, it's really cold, we're just going to go ahead and all snuggle up in the living room and watch a family movie. It's now 8 o'clock at night, halfway through the family movie, and all of a sudden you hear this terrible crashing noise outside, and the power goes out instantly. You try to look out the window to see what's going on, but the heavy bands of snow make it impossible to see anything farther than about 6 inches from your house window. You know that the power going out may be something as simple as just a transformer blew and they just need to go through and reroute power and get you some power, so you may be out for a couple hours. But you've gone through a preparedness course like this one and said, we could be out of power till tomorrow morning. Let's prepare. So the first thing you want to do is think of warmth. How are we going to stay warm if the power is going to be out all night? With snow, not only is the temperature going to drop on an ambient temperature, but also the wind chill will make it go even colder. There is a very fancy wind chill chart at the National Weather Service, or NOAA's website, that you can be able to look at to be able to see a wind chill chart. For this instance, we're going to say the wind chill is going to bring it down to negative 10 degrees for the wind chill outside. So you definitely don't want to be out there, because less than 30 minutes of bare skin exposure will cause frostbite. That's how cold it's going to be outside. Inside, you had your furnace set to a nice 75 degrees before the power went out. But now that the power went out, you have no blower, and your furnace does not have the ability to run. So you're not going to have heat. Your first concept again is how we're going to stay warm. Best thing to do, find a smaller room in the house that everyone can fit in. And it's time to go camping. Everyone goes into that room, grabs some sleeping bags. Also, one of the things that you should have in disaster supply kits that is more additional than what we're talking about in the basic is during the winter, have those those body warmer packs. The hot hands. They actually make body warmer styles that last for 24 hours. Grab one of those, break it apart, shake it all up, and throw it to the foot part of the sleeping bag before anyone gets in it. This is going to keep the sleeping bags pretty warm. So the idea of having the heat packs like that is to be able to keep it where you can be able to have heat sources to start with. Now, again, you can't just take an electric heater and plug it into the side of the wall because you have no electricity. It defeats the purpose. So other heat sources that you'll want to work with is going to be a sleeping bag rated for the cold, those hand warmers, anything that you would use in a campsite that you can be able to keep warm that does not include anything that can produce a fume. So those propane heaters are not a good idea to have because they produce a fumes, and you don't want that as another risk because now you're looking at carbon monoxide poisoning. If you have a backup generator, maybe it'd be a good idea just to throw the backup generator outside, turn it on, and run the cable into the room that you're going to choose to run an electric heater. But again, now you're looking at you're going to be burning fuel for that, and you want to make sure that's outside. So you've now got everyone snuggled up into the master bedroom. We're going to use that as the example because it's the biggest room that everyone can fit in for this. And it's been 3 hours since the power went out, and it's now going to get pretty cold in there. Now we're looking at 50-degree temperature inside of the inside of the room. You're going to want to make sure that everyone stays warm. So again, keep up with any concept you can for heat. You're going to want to also stay away from anything with an open flame for heat. Now, if you're in a home that has a fireplace, that might be the room that you choose because you've got a fireplace. Make sure you have enough wood that you can be able to have easy access to before the storm starts, that you can be able to keep that fire stoked. And then make sure that the little ones don't put their hands in there, and you should be fine. But something like that is an advantage. Other places, like the last house that we were at, has a gas fireplace. Again, it needs the electricity to will actually operate the system. Now, some gas fireplaces, and you'll have to look at yours, may be able to be started with just a flame and not the electric start. So if you have tanked gas, like for instance, my grandparents' house, theirs is like this. They have a natural gas tank that they have to get replenished whenever they want to use, like a propane tank kind of thing. This then can be lit either with the electric start, which is to flip the switch and it goes on, or B, they actually have a physical dial or a physical knob that they can be able to turn and light it using just a open flame, like a lighter for a grill. Now they have a gas-powered furnace that they can be able to use for a disaster. Granted, they're in the middle of Arizona, so using something like that in the cold doesn't really work as well, but here in Colorado, we can have a few of those things here too. So you go through, it's now 2 o'clock in the morning. You guys are all staying warm. You guys have walked through, prepared, have the concept, but the power's still out. And now it's getting even colder. You guys are now into the 40s inside the house. But outside, the snow is getting really deep. Keep the spirits high, because even though the kids are sleeping, you might not be. You're going to want to make sure that you have some stuff for entertainment. Reading a book, or having games to be able to play. Cards are always a great thing for a distraction, just to kind of keep going forward with that. The best thing to do is keep the mind busy, because the wandering mind is the one that's going to cause the most problems. It is now 4 o'clock in the morning. It has been 8 hours since the power went out, and all of a sudden the TV in the living room comes on and starts talking to you. Power just came back on. The biggest thing to remember is your heater is now going to want to work overtime. Go over to your heater's thermostat, turn it down to the lowest temperature that it has to be able to have a natural breaking point for that furnace to be able to stop for a little bit. Because if you drop down to 40 degrees and you want to go to 70, it's going to be working overtime to be able to get to that point. drop it down to 50, have the furnace build the air up to 50. As soon as it gets there, wait a couple minutes, build it back up again. Now you can build it to 70. A little easier, a little more efficiently, and you're not going to put a lot of strain on your units. Now that everyone's all said and done, we're all good, we made it through the night, we're not all freezing cold anymore, there's a new problem. We can't get out. There's a foot of snow on the ground. My car is not a 4-wheel drive big giant truck. I can't go anywhere. I'm stuck until the snowplows come. School's canceled, by the way. No school is going to have a 1 foot snow on the ground in Colorado and have school go through. We don't do that. We're lucky if we have school anything less than 3 inches sometimes. It just depends on what goes on here. So school's out. You're not going to be able to make it to work, and you're still stuck at the house. Okay. You now have heat and electricity and all that, so you can just go back to your normal everyday cooking. But let's say that you didn't have heat at this point. Or electricity at this point. You can't use your stove. That's when you go to looking at your supplies. What supplies do I already have stocked? What things do I have that I don't need heat to be able to warm up? Or, if you're me, you have a camp stove. If you use your camp stove limited, you can be able to use that to cook something like a can of soup or SpaghettiOs or something like that. But again, keep in mind, the more you use it, the more fumes you're going to create. And you don't want to have a lot of fumes building up inside your house during this time, because that's just a whole new problem. So you make some SpaghettiOs for breakfast for all the kids, and they're all excited because they get SpaghettiOs for breakfast. But it's hot food, and it's going to make that feeling so much better. Also, if you've got a tea kettle, you can both make hot water and make some hot chocolate. Something like that makes the mental status go a long way. When you look at this scenario, the best thing to do is to both think, okay, if we were to get the warning today, what would we do? Do I have the capability of surviving for 72 hours stuck in my home? Or do I need to be rethinking what we already have set up? That's the idea of this scenario, is to think, what do I have? I have A, B, C, X, Y, Z. So one of the challenges that I would like to lay out for you here as the ending to this podcast is to go to your pantry. Forget everything else of the disaster supply kit for right now, but just go to your pantry and look for 2 items. Number 1, what food do I have? Do I have enough food for 3 meals a day per person or per dog in my pantry right now, if right now a disaster were to strike? If the answer is yes, fantastic. If the answer is no, you might want to start thinking about what can you do to make that kit be fully stocked. Number 2, water. Do I have enough water for 1 gallon of water per person per day for 3 days? So in other words, do I have 3 gallons of water per adult? Or do I have 1.5 gallons of water per infant? Do I have 1 gallon of water for my dog or cat? I always say dog because I have a dog. So those are the 2 things that I want you to look for in your kits. If you have those already set up, good for you. Then you can keep going on your disaster supply kit. On the next episode, when we talk about go bags, we're really going to get into more of the details on the remainder of that supply kit. But that's why I wanted you guys to focus now on food and water. If you have those 2, we can work on the rest. But always make sure you have enough food and water for you and your family. Well, that's going to be all for our show today. Thank you again for tuning in. This is WX0CAS. Christopher here, saying 73s to you all, and stay safe. podcast is a part of the Murillo Disaster Education Program. To learn more, visit www.murillowx.org. Intro song by Scott Holmes, Hot Shot, and credit song by Lobo Loco, Old West Ring. All recordings are copyrighted 2019. To use in educational settings, email us at contactus@murillowx.org.